Hello everyone, it's me Kallum. Welcome back to the channel on this great Saturday evening. The sun is greeting this recording, however the finished video will likely be greeted by the moon. Almost definitely. But yeah, welcome to this Silverwolf post-release analysis video. I did say last week at the start of the Blade video I wouldn't be doing one, but over the course of this past week I have changed my mind on that a bit. I don't think everything that needs to be said has been said on her in general, and I think that this Center has been a bit too extreme, one-sided or the other, and it's kind of dropped the nuance that a character like Silverwolf just deserves and needs to be able to be recommended properly. Additionally, I wanted to talk about it before a banner is gone, because it's probably pretty important. So if I talked about this later on, after a banner was gone, I could imagine not even imagine, I just know internally it's not a good idea to do that because of some of the things I'm going to say today. But yeah, we're back on the Honey Hunter. This video is going to be a bit more edited, so I hope you'll enjoy watching. I want to just say it at a time in case you're about to tab out. Maybe give it a chance. I'm going to try and edit a bit things in so it's more visually appealing, because I understand it's not smart to it's not respectful of your time to just baller in a recording and that's it. I mean, it works to a certain extent, obviously, which is why not everything is like heavily edited here. I frankly don't have the effort nor the determination time with the time I have allocated to making videos to be able to make such a high tier video. But I'm gonna do my best, so I hope you'll enjoy some of the things I'll put in this video, whatever. Alright, but yeah, Silverwolf, Faction, Stellar Hunters, Rarity, 5-star, Path, Melody, Combat types, Quantum, and Story. Member of the Stellar Hunters, Genius Hacker, Gamer Girl, Small and Herta. No cap for real. But yeah, Silverwolf, she basically hacks her bunny from Honkai Impact 3rd, who herself was a very strong elemental support. So it's funny seeing this Star Rail version be pretty similar. So yeah. Her stats are all the stats you'd ever need, really. They're kind of low because she's a support, after all. Pretty basic. 110 energy cost, it's low cost. 100 taunt, kind of stops the enemy from hitting every turn, but I don't know. And she has fairly high base speed, which is pretty important because, as we'll get into, she wants to have a turn as often as possible, just because of the way her kit works. And with that, let's get into her skills. And getting right into the skills. Basic attack is what a basic attack does. System warning. Looks pretty cool in my opinion from the animation. It applies a bug, which we'll get into in a minute, and that does give it a value. And the fact that even if she doesn't use SP, she does some kind of debuffing, which means even if you stack speed on her and you don't need to use a skill or need to use anything, a basic attack will still serve more purpose than just giving you a skill point. Moving on to the core part of Silverwolf, which makes her who she is in this meta, her skill allow changes. There is a 85% base chance to add one weakness of an on-field ally's type to the target enemy. And here already we have a slight misunderstanding with us and the game. This is another reason why I felt like also making this video to make a more scratch that. So, by on-field allies type, it does not mean the amount of a element's characters you have. So having 3 quantum characters, including Silverwolf, does not mean you'll have a 75% chance, which this description might imply, right, of an on-field allies type. So it's one of the allies on your field, so yeah, you think that, right? No, it's not like that, sadly. Instead of that, it counts your on-field team's elements total. So I could have, like I said, 3 quantum characters and 1 wind character. Bronya, the best buffer, best girl too. Have her on the field as well, and you might think that's gonna be 75% chance for quantum, 25% chance for wind, right? Makes sense. 3/4 are my quantum allies, 1/4 is my wind ally. Sadly not. It works on a total elemental basis. So it would add all the quantum you have, the repeating quantum, it wouldn't count them. It would take 1 quantum and 1 wind, because those are the 2 elements in your team, and then put them in a blender. And that's a 50-50 chance. So, you know how you hate your 50-50s on gotcha and you keep losing them? Well, essentially what Slow Wolf does is she takes one skill point and gambles it for a banner called your team's elemental types, in which case you risk a 50-50 if you'll get Quantum or if you'll get Wind. However, if the enemy already has one of these weaknesses, so if the enemy already has a Wind weakness and you have Wind and Quantum in your mixer, it will only apply Quantum because Wind is already on the enemy, so it will not add on top of that resistance. This helps a lot in not forcing you to like completely be RNG, which allows some situations where Steel Wolf will still apply a specific element you probably want, I'm assuming, based on the enemy. Which there are already a few of them. For example, if you use Natasha and Bronya and Sealy and Steel Wolf against World 5 Simulated Universe boss Kafka, you will always get a Quantum implant. Same goes to Svarog in World 4 if you have Bailu in your team as your healer. Which, yeah, essentially gives you a taste of how it would be if Steel Wolf didn't have RNG. Additionally, this is also based on our team, so if there was to be a possible team of 4 Quantum allies instead of 3 and a different one, you would in fact have a 100% chance to apply Quantum weakness on an enemy that doesn't have one already, which essentially allows you to make every enemy weak to Quantum in the game, right? And that team would include Sealy, so you'd have the strongest damage dealer character being able to take down and break the shield of every enemy. This is what Steel Wolf's current value is. So pulling it right now, honestly speaking, is a invitation and the permission to build Mono Quantum, which is why if you have pulled Sealy, I would recommend you pull Steel Wolf. If you're willing and ready to pull again in 1.3 when we get our first Quantum Shielder, like a sustain unit, Fu Huan, a preservation character, which her kit is not very much specified yet because it's not in beta or anything, so I won't go into depth there, but essentially it's strong enough that we are kind of sure she might be able to solo sustain a team in a very good, like fairly decently. And after that, in 1.5, 1.6, roughly before 2.0, we'll be getting a Quantum Harmony character named Hanabi, which will essentially be like Bronya but scaling off HP percent and having slightly weaker buffs in some regards, but making up for that by giving skill points to the team, which will allow you to have up to a maximum of 7 skill points at a given moment. The reason I'm telling you this, despite not being about Steel Wolf per se, is because you can't build a Mono Quantum team, really, without having Steel Wolf. Steel Wolf doesn't need Mono Quantum needs Steel Wolf. However, this is a niche where I would say Steel Wolf excels in. But if you were to take Steel Wolf out of this niche, if you were to put any other team, which I'm assuming not everyone that pulled Steel Wolf has Sealy or wants to pull for future Quantum units. And in that situation, Steel Wolf becomes an objectively mediocre character, because her RNG, the best case, is a 50-50, and worst case is a 25% chance of everything. If you have 4 different elements. If you have 3 different elements, a 33% chance, a third. And if you lose this gamble, if you lose your gotcha, you spend your 1 skill point to gamble on that banner, and you don't get the element you want, there is no guarantee either, because she can reapply the same element. Meaning you could end up wasting skill point and turn after turn, not getting the element you want. And what this will cause is your memory of chaos time, to your cycle amount, to continue to decrease, which will stop you from being able to get 3 stars, which is, your main goal, right? You want the rewards, the jades. And that's where Steel Wolf utterly fails, because you cannot rely on a character to be... If your entire luck of clearing relies on RNG, then imagine this. I'm going to give you a situation real quick, just before we move on. You have an MOC, of course, a Memory of Chaos, and there's 2 sides, right? And you cleared the first side fairly decently, and your team was already, you had a team that was ready to deal with a weakness, so you didn't have Steel Wolf there. Your other side, however, has Sealy and Steel Wolf and Bronya and Natasha, 3 elements. And then you face the boss, and the boss has already a wind weakness, so there's a 50-50 between Quantum and Physical. However, you use your first combo, you gamble your first skill point, you get Physical. Damn it, I have enough turns, easy, we can do this, and then I'll use my Sealy ult, you think. Then you do it again, it's Physical again. You start to get a bit agitated, your cycle drops again. You're like, okay, I'll get this next time, I can't lose that often. Then you do it again, and then you get Physical again. And at that point you realize you're not going to get the 28 cycle clear, like 28 cycle left clear, and you're forced to restart the entire run. This is not very efficient for your time as a human being, nor is it very relaxing for you for your stress levels, if I say so, if I can describe it like that. Does this make Steel Wolf bad? No, because assuming you did hit that Quantum weakness in the first or second turn, you could easily take down that boss pretty fast because she increased her damage by a lot. which we'll get to in the later half of this video. But yeah, this is a very important part I want to go over here. Slow Wolf, in my eyes, is mediocre outside of Mono Quantum because RNG is not a reliable factor. It's why when I talk about Gambling Girl, I still can't pronounce her name, I'll learn it next week. Trust me, there's a reason for that. When Gambling Girl can do more damage than any 4-star with a bit of luck, well, still luck, I would still consider it to be a mediocre 4-star overall, objectively speaking, because luck is not a factor you want to rely on when the end game here depends on you clearing a boss as fast as possible. Now to a simple thing, her ultimate user banned, there is a 100% base chance to decrease the target enemy's defense by 45% for 3 turns, and at the same time does some quantum damage. Pretty basic, you know, after that whole mess up there, this is pretty fun. It's basically Pella's ultimate, but single target only, and for more turns, for an extra turn. It lasts, Pella's will last 2 turns, this lasts 3 turns, and it's single target only, and does more damage. So yeah, pretty neat. It's just, you know, debuffing of the standard kind. And their talent, which is awaiting system respawn, which is the bugs I mentioned earlier. They can decrease enemy attack by 10%, defense by 8%, and speed by 6%. Honestly, defense is the only relevant one, but I was honestly more pessimistic about these talents before I actually got to play her, and like she was in the game, so when I did my pre-release analysis of her. And honestly, after playing her, I have to say it's pretty consistent. You hit so often with her that you generally end up having all the bugs by the time you're going to do your big damage in your ult, which is what we tend to calculate here. Yeah, the rest of it, her technique is pretty cool. You know, it can break any shield, basically. It can deal shield damage to all enemies. Like, doesn't matter which type they have, which is really cool in Memory of Chaos. I mean, not yet as well, but I mean Simulated Universe, when you're just having a chillaxed run and you just want to have a technique and spam without worries. You can just spam it and the enemies will be broken and entangled. Then her traces, one of them, the first one extends the bug duration and gives you an additional chance to implant if there's a weakness break, which comes up pretty often if you're in a quantum team, because again, self-deal break will break the shield and seal will as well. This increases the skill, the weakness implant, so the elemental type implant by a turn. However, will not increase the duration of the all type resistance decrease for 2 turns. So you'll still kind of need to skill every 2-ish turns, because the all type resistance is pretty damn big. Especially if you're if you're fighting an enemy that is already weak to quantum, because then the all type down is the main thing she's doing. And then side note is a very consistent trace, I like it. If there's 3 or more debuffs, then they get an additional 3% res down, which will be mainly any enemy that Soul Wolf even touches, because she does like 3 debuffs from like a single skill. So now moving on to the Eidolons. Her first Eidolon's social engineering gives her 7 energy for each enemy that is debuffed when she uses her ult. So when she attacks the enemy, and the enemy has 5 debuffs, she will gain 35 energy, which is a decent chunk of her ult. This allows her to use her signature light cone more easily compared to her event light cone, which we'll get to in just a minute. Zombie Network, which is her E2, used to be her E1 and used to decrease the effect res by 30%, which is why many people consider it to be one of the best E1s in the game by like any character. Because before, yeah, so essentially the big thing about this E2 is, so while effect res decreasing is great, and it is her best Eidolon overall, it kind of has lost value by the fact that all enemies were nerfed in 1.1 to have less effect res, meaning this Eidolon also lost a bit of value. It's still great because it allows you to build warranted damage for her, and if you can do that, then her ult does pretty respectable damage as a sub DPS character. Her E3 is just talent, it's just more skill, it's like, which is, yeah, just a tiny bit more and increase her base chance. Not very negligible, honestly. Her E4, just more damage, honestly, based on her debuff, so it's basically like E1 but more damage. And the same thing goes for E6. So I'd say if you're going to wail for her while she's still here, go E2, don't pull further. E4 and E6 are kind of, you're not going to build her damage really, especially right now where we are, and I don't think her damage is going to be that great. However, if you are a Haxer Bunny / Brawny / Slow Wolf simp, go ahead. They're decent Eidolons, they're not useless, they're not dead. They're kind of just superfluous. Moving on to the light cones. If you can just skip the 3-star ones. The 4-star ones, I would say there's no discussion to be had. The current event like code, which is, I believe, still available from the event, which increases her attack by 40% at S5, which is free, and gives her 8 energy when she hits a defense-reduced enemy, is just the best. There is no discussion. You can use the Luca light code, the resolution shines as pearls of sweat, which with S5, S4, and S5 can be good, but I'm never gonna recommend this because, as I've said before, I dislike RNG, which is why I really rate her as a mediocre character overall. And having a light cone that gives you more RNG to deal with while not decreasing your RNG overall is not something I can recommend. If you want to do it, be my guest. However, I personally am against it. So yeah, before the tutorial mission starts, is just no discussion her best light cone. For the 5-star light cones, Velt's works kind of because he gives effect hit rate for skill and attack increases. So yes, if you have in the name of the world and you have no Velt, which rip, Velt is really cool, then yes, it's great for you can use it for Silver Wolf. It's not going to be better overall than the event light code, but it's probably better for her damage. And outside of that, it's her signature, which gives her effect hit rate as well. Increase her crit rate, which is okay, and then also allows you to increase your damage by 12% against the enemy, which is essentially what Velt's ult does as well. So it's essentially consolidating Velt's entire supportive kit outside of the slowing, but the debuffing of his kit into a light gun, which yeah, it's a decent light gun. You can pull for it, however, I'd recommend getting E1 before that. Now that we've talked about her kit itself and her light cones, oh yes, by the way, for her Relic set, she wants to be on 4-piece Quantum, because that gives her more personal damage, and she can, which is based on what you want to build her for. An alternative would in fact be the Wind set, because she wants more turns, so increasing her own turn, not a bad idea. Musketeer can work if you really need speed. I don't think you would, I haven't tried it, but it's there. Kind of that's it outside of that. So generally I'd still say go 4-piece Quantum because we'll all eventually be able to build damage decently, especially once you have this event light cone, as it gives enough effect hit rate that you can just go into crit body and stuff. Yeah, that's it for her kit. I hope you all like this part. Now we'll be moving on to her math part, which won't be long, but I really want to talk about her mathematical performance of increasing your overall damage against a single enemy. Catch you in a bit. And welcome back to Excel. Woohoo, my favorite part of the videos. Yeah, so I'm going to try my best to make this part more presentable as well. But as you can see, I first want to show you Sealy with Silverwolf and Bronya, and then Bronya and Pella compared. Reason being, I've been talking about Sealy a lot in Mono Quantum, so of course she's the first character I would talk about here. Another reason I wanted to make a post-release is because I've learned a lot since I made that original video, and I kind of cringe at myself looking back already because of the fact that a lot of our understanding of the calculations in this game have changed. The defense formula I use is different already because I now understand how defense ignore and defense reduction work with each other. They're additive together, which makes them better, which makes ignore better actually. So you have 10% here because whoops, that's one thing wrong there already. There we go. So this enemy is already weak to Quantum in this assumption, so Silverwolf is not applying a Quantum weakness. So with Pella and Bronya here, the enemy is already weak to Quantum. While down here, the enemy is not weak to Quantum, so Pella and Bronya are fighting an enemy that they cannot are buffing Sealy, who's fighting an enemy she cannot break, and an enemy that is not 20% weak to her element already. While Silverwolf is applying, which I don't know why I did this formatting here, one second. If I don't do this, it does get confusing. If this is solo Silverwolf, which is my bad, I'm sorry about that. Alright, let's see this, and then formatting. There we go, okay, so this is with Bronya and Silverwolf against Bronya and Pella. So this is an enemy where the weakness does get applied, and so you win the RNG. In this case, this would be depending on your healer obviously, but generally a 33% chance applied. I'm not going to question that RNG because I don't want to quantify this RNG because it's not based on rotations. You might take 10 turns for this, you might take a single turn for this. It's up to the luck. Or in the future, when you do have mono quantum, it's not up to luck, which is why I'm a big fan of that team, and I really want to cover it when the time comes to cover it properly. But here, the enemy is not weak to quantum, so Silwolf applies a weakness, while Bronya and Pella don't do that, so Sealy can't have a weakness. While up here, the enemy is weak to quantum, so the playing field is even. You can see the stats here. They're buffed by Bronya's ult, and attack is buffed, damage rate is buffed, crit damage is buffed, and the damage percent buffs are here as well. I've added them here rather than here because they're stats. So yeah, as you can see, I'm not going to bore you with any gibberish. That's why I added this little percentage here, which I think is very important. I hate myself for not having done this before. You can see the damage difference as well. Between Bronya and Pella, an easier Pella by the way, I can add E5, which is just 2% more, which is this. Which, it's not much, it's just 2% of a difference, but yes. In this case, Bronya and Pella, combined with Bronya and Pella's damage increase, is only 18% behind a damage increase you get from having Silwolf in that team. Of course, Silwolf has her own personal damage, which is pretty decent, honestly. However, Pella's skill is also not to be underestimated, as it does deal out pretty decent damage once you get to builder damage. Because now with the new event Lycon, she doesn't need she actually needs 0 effect hit rate, so you can build all into crit, which means you can stuff like the Ice Set, which gives her 25% crit damage after using ultimate. So, and the argument of Silwolf's personal damage may offset this difference to be even larger. I would counter by saying that Pella's personal damage is not that bad either on her skill. Her ultimate is not great, honestly, though. That's true. And also offset by the fact that Silwolf would still need a Silwolf. Never mind. Oh, and Silwolf does have the bug here, the defense bug, which I included, and the trace, which adds 3% all type press down, so that's why it's 133. The reason it's 120 here is because Sealy has innate 20% quantum resistance penetration on her ult, which once again reflects here and is not here because this would be 80% otherwise, but with the resistance penetration it becomes 100%. This one without the resistance penetration would be 113, like it is for most characters. But yeah, as you can see, the damage is 18% here, and now if we move to the more optimistic situation for Silwolf, an encounter where Sealy doesn't get the weakness already, it's a whopping 36% difference, which is kind of big, honestly speaking. Additionally, when the enemy does become weak to quantum, the quantum 4-piece set, which gives 10% defense ignore on base, but 20% when the enemy is weak to quantum, activates the second half as passive, so Silwolf gains even more of an edge there compared to Pella. So as you can see, the damage is pretty large here, and I would say in a situation like this where everything worked in your favor and you won the RNG, Silwolf is substantially better than Pella. But it might also either not work to your RNG, because this would be like, imagine this is if you didn't get the RNG, 25% better. While here, the playing field is already pretty even, so I'd say the 18% isn't that big. And you shouldn't forget Pella does debuff in an AoE at the same time. But I would still say pulling Silwolf isn't a bad choice even if you have Pella, because Silwolf is a second Pella, and Pella is good, Pella is great, Pella is amazing. So ergo, Silwolf is basically, if you were not to consider the fact that she's a limited 5-star, also pretty great, amazing, and awesome. However, she's a limited 5-star, so her pull value does get decreased by this fact that Pella is competitive with her. Now this would be the example with Sealy. I'd also want to share the example with Clara, which I've also updated with my... These are my previous calculations I did with Clara for the Yukong video from a few weeks ago. I've updated it now, as I said. So you can have Silwolf with our 113% resistance reduction. In this case, again, it's lower because there is no natural resistance penetration of 20% like with Sealy. Defense is the same as before. Obviously, you lose the defense ignore from the quantum set, so it's lower than earlier. And you can compare it to Pella, for example, here, which if I was to, you know, how much of an increase would this be? That's a 22% increase. So, as you can see, once again, the same number starts showing up where... okay, I'm sorry, I am very sorry. This was assuming the enemy is already weak to physical. So if the enemy is already weak to physical, then there's only a 22% increase over using Pella. Of course, Clara is in fact a more AoE focused unit, but I think I'm mainly showing this to get the point across that the numbers you just saw are not limited to ceiling. Generally, the rule follows that if the enemy is already weak to the element, that it's like 18% to 22% damage increase over E0 Pella, and like 16 to 20% increase over E5 Pella. So assuming the enemy wasn't weak to physical and Silverwolf made them weak to physical here, you can see there is a pretty big difference. Oh wait, yep, there's a pretty big difference because the damage drops. That resistance is a lot. Resistance is king. So suddenly Silverwolf decreasing the enemy's resistance, you know, making them weak to physical, which makes them take 20% more, lose 20% resistance to that element, and then also add 13% from her trace and the second half of her skill, gives a lot of damage. And this is why Silverwolf is a nuanced character. This is what I would like and love for you to take away from this video. Silverwolf is not a good character, nor is she a bad character. Silverwolf is Silverwolf, and Silverwolf is mediocre at the same time, because either she's a 22% better character, or assuming you either miss your RNG, you know, yeah, by the way, what would happen if you miss your RNG? Let's look at that as well. 0.8, so enemy is not weak, and then you don't get the 20% here, so, wait, okay, this should be 93, let me think, yeah, 93, you can see 26%, so if you miss your RNG, and you only get the second half of the skill to hit, like to actually like, because the other one is element reliant, while this one is the second half is all type, all element resistance down. But yeah, so as you can see, it stays the 26%, so like 22 to 26%, and then 53% if the enemy isn't already weak, which also means you can brute force content with these characters. However, it's be locked behind RNG, which eats a skill point, so you lose a turn and a skill point when you don't get the element you want. And I cannot with good faith say this is a must-pull character. This is the Kazuha, which by the way, I hate this expression because it implies a fundamental misunderstanding of how both games work. It assumes that RNG is normal and RNG is good, as if RNG cannot ruin runs. Specifically, if you really love to be a Genshin player, I can call Sylve what you want, what she actually is. She is the Eula of this game. A character that can actually kind of be insane, however, a lot of the time, just because she lost a single RNG chance, can drop to being not much of an upgrade over a 4-star character. That's how it is. Highest highs, lowest lows, as they say. And that's honestly all I gotta say. I've shown you the numbers. If you have questions, leave them in the comments down below. I hope the editing was better in this video. I hope at least some of you enjoyed watching this video. That's it from me. This was Kallum, signing out. I hope to see you next week again, roughly the same time. Leave a subscribe if you don't want to miss next video. It's gonna be about 2 great 4-star characters. And the week after that video, I promise, finally, the Kafka pre-release will happen, which I intentionally delayed because of some drama we had with Honey Hunter making some bugs on their website. But once we're sure that if Kafka's like this, boys, I'ma cook a banger video for you guys. Alright, take care, have a great rest of your weekend. This was it. Adios, amigos.